Hey everyone, it's Alex and welcome to this video. We're going to be discussing an absolutely massive balance update to Marvel Snap. This OTA hits hard. There's a ton of cards being changed, buffed, and nerfed, of course. We also have some changes to the Grand Arena, including some modifications to the pre-con decks. We have a card being buffed from the Grand Arena, and we also have a new list of bans, well, cards that have been added to the ban list overall, which should make the experience a little more positive for those of you that have been grinding in the Grand Arena. Regardless, let's get started with the first change in Sunspot. Sunspot going from a 1-1 to a 1-0. Now, for those of you that have been around for a while would know that Sunspot started as a 1-1, got nerfed to a 1-0, got buffed back to a 1-1, and now is getting nerfed again to a 1-0. The reason for this is pretty simple. They don't want to nerf Fantasticar because, there's that, but also because of Fantasticar, you're getting the double dipping of these end of turn effects, and Sunspot can absolutely go insane, especially when you consider that you have Fantasticar, you have Invisible Woman, you have all these ways to really take advantage of these end of turn effects, and Sunspot was insanely outpacing what 1-drops were traditionally supposed to be capable of, right? Like, we have another 1-drop in here that I'm actually really excited about. That's a 1-5, and Sunspot blows past that, like, almost with ease. Right? So Sunspot's power has always been on the upper echelon of what 1-drops were capable of. And so they're taking a little bit back, considering you have Invisible Woman, you have Fantasticar, all of which are adding power to Sunspot, who has been core to those high win rate decks, right? Like, those decks have been absolutely spanking. Clown card decks have been doing super good, and Sunspot's been a major part of that. You're seeing a Series 2 card running a 53% win rate and a 14% meta share, largely because of the impact of Fantasticar. And we're still seeing Invisible Woman, whether or not she's going to be making much of an impact here, but overall, she's been impressive thus far. But Sunspot had to get brought down a little bit, and it's because those particular decks are just overperforming by quite a bit. And that's going to take us to Gwenpool. This actually makes me a little sad. Now, I have to be honest with you, I think a lot of people saw this coming when Galacta got changed. You figured that Gwenpool was going to get changed as well. Galacta and Gwenpool have been staples in these like mid-range style decks, which run Zabu, and then Gwenpool, Galacta, Enchantress, and Shang-Chi is basically the starting package, and then you put another package in and you got yourself a really good deck. When Gwenpool kind of evaded changes compared to Zabu and Galacta, I wondered if Gwenpool's time was going to come as well. Gwenpool has been consistently an excellent card. I think its slight RNG factor does make it more fair than something like a Galacta. Like, at both their peaks, I feel like Galacta was probably a little stronger, especially with that +3. But with Gwenpool, she's always been on the cusp of just like being super insane. And well, I guess they figured we got to take a little bit more off of those mid-range decks, and they're taking her down by 1 point. I don't think this does too much to Galacta. However, I don't know, man. I almost feel like Galacta was not necessarily a problem. I think that those decks have been performing particularly good. And it's maybe less about Galacta and more about the fact that, like, at the 4 cost alongside Zabu, you do get amazing tech alongside Shang-Chi, Enchantress. If you don't get Galacta, you get Gwenpool. That's still good on turn 4 or turn 3 or whatever you happen to do. So, like, they're interchangeable in a way where it almost guarantees you get some buff synergy going on. And when you get, like, a Brood or a Sebastian Shaw or a Human Torch or, a Thing or whatever, it basically just amplifies the reach that these cards have, right? So, I mean, when you run a 15% meta share, that's pretty prevalent. Like, it's probably worth considering a nerf at that point. 53% win rate. Gwenpool's been a good card for a very long time, but to some degree, I wasn't surprised, but I'm surprised they did it right after nerfing Zabu, right? Like, clearly the Zabu change was just one step towards modifying that mid-range package so that it could be weaker, because you've hit Galacta, you've hit Zabu, now you've hit Gwenpool. That's a lot of incremental power being taken off those decks in particular, and so it appears as though Second Dinner wants to take them down even further, and that's what happened to Gwenpool. Then we go to Dormammu. This is actually a quite significant change. Dormammu going from a 7-11, nice, I don't know why it's nice, it just reminds me of hot dogs, to a 7-10, but that's not even saying, Alex, why is there a green arrow here? Well, it's because there's also a change to the summoning ritual as well. So let's talk about them both in tandem. First of all, Dormammu's win rate is absolutely terrible, almost no meta share, but I would actually venture to say that the win rate is probably a factor of the fact that, like, you know, you have almost no people playing it, and whoever's playing is probably extremely inebriated and causing that win rate to drop. It's not a 31% win rate card. I doubt internally it's actually running 31% win rate. We just don't have enough stats. Like, we don't have a significant sample size here. But Dormammu needed help, and I actually thought that Dormammu was a really fun infusion into Destroy, and I felt like it actually played pretty well. And they know they're taking a risk here by essentially, they're nerfing one power off Dormammu, but power for Dormammu was never the factor. It was the ease of jumping through the hoops of getting him out, right? And so you got the summoning portal ritual sword going from a 3 to a 2, a very significant change, especially when you consider if you destroy things like Bucky Barnes or Wolverines or whatever, you're actually adding value to your board while also bringing Dormammu out. So Dormammu, this is a pretty significant buff. And making these steps easier also makes it easier to play him out on turn 5 or to sneak him out on turn 6 or what have you, right? So there's a lot of opportunities to get Dormammu out with huge power while also kind of synergizing with the rest of your deck. This change is significant, very significant. Now, it is worth noting, though, that your deck still needs to rely on cards that are willing to be destroyed to activate that first step as a whole. So it still takes a little bit to get the wheels churning, but once you're moving, this change is going to be very significant to improving Dormammu's playability. So I am looking forward to it. Dormammu, to me, feels like an alternate way of playing Destroy. It feels like the kind of thing where you have, you know, discard has Black Knight, it has Apocalypse, you know, it has Hela. This was the Hela of Destroy. It was like that whole new big bad style archetype of Destroy. And I'm glad they're taking a look at it because I know a lot of people got the card, a lot of people were excited for it, and it honestly has not been meta relevant at all. So hopefully this brings it back. Now, this next change, honestly, I am super excited about. I love this. Now, it might be OP, I don't know, but I do like the design. Black Cat, a card that saw almost no play. You almost never actually play Black Cat from hand. It was still just a Hela card, and Hela has not really been seeing play. Going from a 2/6 to a 1/5, I love this. Now, 1/5 has always been like an insane stat line, right? Like, you need significant drawbacks. Like, Martyr's a 1/5, and Martyr actively tries to lose you the game. With Black Cat, you know, you have an end of turn, discard this from your hand, and a 1/5, which means, like, if you top deck it, like, you basically want to play it. Like, you just want to play it as the 1/5. And when Hydration Bobbert was a 1/5, he was literally one of the best cards in the game. We saw him literally everywhere. Now he's a 1/4, and we still see him being played, well, because of Fantastic Art and stuff like that, but that's a whole other conversation. Black Cat as a 1/5 is actually a really interesting design, because essentially if you start with her, if like you have, let's say you have like a deck where you're running, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up, but like Iceman and Black Cat, you draw Black Cat and you're like, well, I'm not playing that Iceman turn 1, I gotta play the Black Cat turn 1. What if you're playing a Surge or a Mr. Fantastic deck and you have Black Cat, and on turn 2 you top deck that Black Cat and you're holding Mr. Fantastic? You're like, oh man, I don't want to discard this Black Cat, but do I delay my Mr. Fantastic? I love this risk and reward style gameplay where you're like, well, I'll play the Black Cat, I guess, and play Fantastic on 3. I don't even know if I would do that. I think I still would go Mr. Fantastic turn 2. But you know what I mean, right? I think that creates really interesting gameplay scenarios where you have to like min-max your draws and what happens. Like, if you draw her on turn 5 and like you have, you know, your 5 cost or whatever you're going to play, you have the thing in your hand for steps, and you're like, man, kind of want this 1/5 on the board. Do I have another line? Like, do I go, you know, Human Torch and Black Cat instead? Like, I like the way it modifies the way your game is being played. Really cool design. Could it potentially be too powerful? Yes, absolutely. A 1/5, which essentially just forces you to play it. That's not a crazy downside. So anyways, I'm really excited about Black Cat. Really interested to see what comes from it. Not to mention, it is an end of turn card too, right? Like, don't forget, it is also an end of turn card. So I bet you're going to see some Black Cat and some end of turn decks, especially ones like Evo, which honestly always have extra energy to spare, right? The decks are often designed with extra energy in mind. So if you top deck Black Cat, yeah, you don't Cyclops Pew Pew, I guess, but you can still play this card down. And then even on turn 5 or whatever with Fantasticar, play Fantasticar and the Black Cat together if you happen to top deck it in that way. So really interesting change. Really like it a lot. And that's going to take us to the Invisible Woman, who, this is the original Invisible Woman, not the First Steps version. Going from a 2/3 to a 2/4. Man, I don't know. I don't think this actually does much. The reason for this is because this card feels awful because of Alioth. Like, Alioth's existence makes Invisible Woman a near impossible play. Like, I know Alioth isn't as popular as it once was, and thank the Lord, like, it's not as popular as it once was, especially in its original iterations where it was like just deleting everything off turn 6. I can't believe that even came out the way it did. But, I mean, 2/4 on Invisible Woman just means everything else just gets Alioth behind it, right? And so the problem is with Invisible Woman, if you're playing an Invisible Woman style deck, and they snap on you on turn 5 or 6, you're like, that's because they have a Goliath, or something bad is coming, right? Someone's gonna get hurt real bad, and it's probably you. And so that's what the problem with Invisible Woman is. It has such an aggressive, hardcore counter. And not just that, to some deck strategies, you also have the Cosmo, which is very impactful on Invisible Woman as well. They slide Cosmo under Invisible Woman, you get cooked as well. I was actually one of the ones that helped design one of the only meta Invisible Woman decks outside of Hela, which was that, like, you had the Ebony Maw, the Omega Reds and stuff. You were hiding all the ongoings behind the Invisible Woman. And then what happened is that they would throw a Cosmo down, and then all the stuff would just be ongoings and stuff, and they wouldn't be affected by the Cosmo. That was a long time. That was like almost 2 years. I brought it to a tournament, right? One of the first tournaments. But anyways, outside of that, like, I called it Super Invisible. Outside of that, like, Invisible Woman has seen almost no play whatsoever. And in the early beta, she was being played a ton because of the amount of Hela. Because you could play Invisible Woman, and then you could do stuff like just proc a bunch of discards behind it, and then Hela guaranteed on the final turn. And the only counter was Cosmo because Goliath didn't exist at the time. So anyways, Invisible Woman, I don't know if this is enough. Because they say there's no inherent downside to Invisible Woman as a 2/4, but it's because it's Goliath and Cosmo and everything that exists around it, right? Now, this is interesting. Do I have to state the obvious? Do I have to? I guess I'm going to have to state the obvious here. The obvious is that, yeah, they're selling a Creative House Pocket Domino variant right now in the shop. Probably a good time to buff Domino. Now, the thing is with Domino is that it does have a drawback, which is not inherently obvious, but by ensuring that it comes out on turn 2, if there are specific cards you need by specific turns, like let's say you want a Galactic or Gwenpool by turn 4, or you need Surfer by turn 6, or Sarah by turn 5, you actually skip a draw essentially, right? So on turn 2, instead of drawing the Sarah that you need for turn 5, you draw Domino every single time, and Sarah remains in your deck. And that can be problematic because essentially if you have cards like, well, you know, I need to play Galactus by turn 6, or this whole deck revolves around me playing Annihilus on turn 5, you're actually several percentage points lower to get those cards because of Domino negating the turn 2 draw. So do keep that in mind, that is the inherent downside of Domino. But as a 2/4, it is kind of fascinating. Now, I wouldn't go to say that this is like all of a sudden a good card or whatever, but you almost have to wonder, like, there's going to be players who are kind of short on collection level and stuff like that. And as a 2/4, like, that's good stats. And yeah, there is a slight percentage downside, kind of like reduction in drawing some cards later on. But a 2/4 is not bad. But then again, like, you have Jeff at 2/3. Jeff is just simply better, right? Like, you must play Jeff over this. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of weird. It's getting closer. It's getting closer to looking like a card you'd want to play. But I still wonder, on aggregate, if the reduction of drawing cards later on impacts Domino enough that it still remains a quote-unquote bad card. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of players that do appreciate being able to play Domino on turn 2 with some additional power, even though it saw absolutely literally no meta share at all. But then again, that's not competitive players. These are on tap-based statistics post-infinite, right? So if you're a new player, maybe this is actually good news for you. Who knows? Let me know in the comments what you think of this Domino change. I'm skeptical, but I think this is pretty risk-free. I doubt Domino's going to break the meta. And just because I said that, Domino's going to break the meta. And now we got Mobius M Mobius. I don't think a lot of people saw this buff coming. Running a 9% meta share and a flat 50% win rate. You have a 3-3 to a 3-4, going up to a 3-4 here. Now, this is pretty significant because essentially, with these types of tech cards, the downside risk is that, like, they're not playing these types of effects, and therefore you play Mobius on turn 3 or 4 or whatever, and, like, he's just low power and it sucks, right? However, you absolutely spank your opponents when they are playing cost-reducing effects, which a lot of people are, in the likes of Surge, Mr. Fantastic, right? And so or Sarah, who's very popular and now banned in Grand Arena. But anyways, Mobius and Mobius served a very important role, right? Very important role to kind of reduce the risk of those cost-reducing effects. Now, you can also use Mobius offensively with something like a Pixie. If Pixie gets changed to a 1-drop, like I've been begging for like, I don't know, a whole year, then suddenly Mobius and Mobius becomes a fantastic card because you can use it both defensively and offensively alongside your strategy, right? Those are when cards really excel. With Pixie, your cost can't be increased or reduced, right? Or sorry, your cost can't be increased. And so if, you know, you change your card to a more expensive cost, it remains at its original one. And you're also having the effect defensively against your opponent. So like it's awesome. It's really awesome. Now Pixie right now is a 2-costed card, so it slows down its effect a little bit. But anyways, Mobius and Mobius I think is probably a buff that didn't need to happen. It surprises me, and this is probably happening because of a very simple thing. They don't want to nerf Mr. Fantastic. So by not nerfing Mr. Fantastic, they keep the season pass intact more or less. And by buffing Mobius M Mobius, a Series 3 card that most people have access to, what you do now is you say, hey, is Mr. Fantastic driving you nuts? Play this dude who just got buffed and is now better, right? And that's kind of, I think, is their mindset around that. Because I don't think Mobius M Mobius needed a buff. It's that we have too many cost-reducing effects right now, and so they're trying to increase the popularity of Mobius M Mobius. Like, imagine buffing a card with a 9% play rate. Like, that's quite a bit to buff. As a tech card, too, right? So, I think the optics of it are kind of interesting. This is probably actually a Mr. Fantastic buff that doesn't appear to be on Mr. Fantastic, in my opinion. We still got a lot more changes to talk about here, coming with Agony, and Agony is getting a straight up power buff here, and that's pretty significant because that's probably going to help the Deadpool synergies and some other synergies that you've been seeing with Agony. Agony doesn't see much play, but I actually think this card is a really cool design. It's like that reverse Hulkbuster, right? And so I actually think this is a kind of a big difference here. It's a significant increase in power. If you consider the likes of something like a Deadpool, which is going to be doubling its power, then this is a lot, right? And so there's a good chance that the Deadpool Destroy variants are going to start playing Agony again, because this extra power does carry weight as you kind of move further along in the game, right? When Deadpool's getting kind of destroyed and doubled up on, then you Venom it and stuff like that. So I do think that Agony represents a really interesting card that should see some more experimentation. So anyways, I like this buff a lot, and at the end of the day, it's kind of low risk. If it ends up making Destroy too good, which, I mean, Destroy has not been too good for too long, or at all, I should say. They did buff Dormammu here as well. I guess we'll have to see. Does Destroy make a massive comeback in Marvel Snap? Well, I hope so. That'd be great. I wouldn't complain about it. Then we got Blink. Now, there is a couple of issues with Blink. The first thing is that 5-costed cards have been so awkward for so long. And we just have seen so much power creep, and that this like blinking out stuff type of deck has just not been very prevalent, despite the fact that Blink honestly is still a good card. I thought it's been a good card for a long time. It goes to a 5/8 from a 5/7. Significant power buff there. And I think that Second Dinner is obviously cognizant, and they even mentioned it here in the note here, that you do, like, 5 costs are weaker right now. Like, the thing coming out has been an influx of power for the 5-cost slot, but 5 costs as a general kind of rule of thumb have been weaker. And part of that's, yes, you do have the Zabu, which sneaks out the 4 costs earlier, but you had a lot of tech at the 4-cost slot, which tend to swing games very rapidly. And 5 costs just don't seem to carry the weight that you'd hope for like an almost end game card, right? So Blink getting a buff I think is really cool. I think the Blink decks are really fascinating, and at a 3% meta share, I think we can afford to give Blink a little love. And the win rate has always been close enough. There have been very good Blink decks in the past, and so hopefully this brings Blink back in a big way, because I actually really do like these deck designs. And maybe even, do we see some Electro? Now, Electro got buffed a while ago for power. And Blinking Electro, that makes sense. Blinking Electro has always been a fun strategy. We'll have to see if that makes a comeback or not. And then we have Mole Man. We don't have any notes here because this is actually kind of a segue into the Grand Arena. Now, obviously, you can actually unlock Mole Man, but Mole Man has been pretty rough. And even in the arena deck that was designed by the game devs, like, it felt pretty rough to play. And so he's getting straight up power from a 3/3 to a 3/4. We have almost no stats on him outside of the Grand Arena, running a 48% win rate and 2% meta share. But apparently their internal stats said, this guy who's creating rocks is not doing good enough. Now, I do have hope that Mole Man could make a Victoria Handshell like really fascinating. So I actually did use my unlock for Mole Man. The Mad Thinker, I'm hoping to unlock as well, but it's a bit of a grind. But anyways, with Mole Man, this is kind of fascinating, which is going to take us to the Grand Arena changes here. Very good changes. First of all, the Mole Man skill is being changed to a 1 cost plus 3 power, which is significant. Herbie getting nerfed. The Herbie skill going from 3 cost to 4 cost. Ban list additions. Agatha's now banned, which you're seeing Agatha being played in a couple different things, but mostly in that Doctor Doom base shell. You do have Sarah. Okay, Sarah getting banned, which honestly, Sarah was probably one of the absolute most OP cards in the Grand Arena. Cannonball and I guess Mercury being banned as well. Cannonball being banned is kind of a little sad. Kind of a little sad, but I get why. It's like such an anti-fun card for the Grand Arena. Even though he's He seems like a combatant in the arena, wouldn't he? Eliath, this is simply to allow the Invisible Woman deck to not be completely unplayable. Storm, Juggernaut, and Viper all getting banned from the Grand Arena. And then we have some changes to the precon decks. The Mole Man and the Doctor Doom precon decks have been so awful for so long. They've been by far the worst of the Grand Arena decks. Mole Man cutting Esme Cuckoo, Essen or Isan, whatever, I still don't know how to say it, Patriot, and then Iron Patriot, sorry, and then adding Surge, Blue Marvel, and Ancient One. So straight up better cards. I mean, Ancient One's maybe a little more sus, but alongside the Blue Marvel, maybe you get some action. And of course, Ancient One can also proc that on the Victoria hand, which obviously Mole Man wants to do. And the Doctor Doom precut is Jennifer Kale, Nocturne, Gore, and Astral Projection, and adding Lockjaw, White Tiger, Magneto, and Red Hulk. The White Tiger and Lockjaw play, you love to see it. I don't know, that's kind of exciting. Poor Jennifer Kale just got buffed, got cut from a precon deck. What a disaster, guys. But anyways, I'm glad they're taking the Grand Arena seriously and staying on top of the meta and trying to make some changes wherever need be. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Make sure you hit that like button. It honestly helps tremendously if you haven't already. And again, if you'd like to watch some more content, I got another video for you on the screen here that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. We'll see you in that next video.